is just one reason. It's not because we haven't had any more money makers. It's because of regulation. Because governments have basically screwed poker. I mean, they've split it so you can only play against people in your own country. So people can't have this dream of these $1 million prize pools.
Poker's actually really becoming the dream for, in my opinion, for a lot of these young kids, especially even in first world countries, to be honest. But actually any world country, if you think about it, like if you even can make like 20,000 a year from poker in like almost every country, you're doing way better.
Yeah,
than
like Slovakia, the average wage is €800 a month. So if you earn 20,000, you'd be earning over the average, and you'd have your freedom. So yeah, in certain countries.
Yeah, well, imagine like in like many African countries, like the average wage is like 80 cents a day or something in some of these countries, or some like crazy small amount.
Yeah.
And it's if you learn to get halfway good, you can totally make like small amounts of money relatively. And
Yeah, I could see that happening. On internet, if you look at the internet stats in Africa and countries like that, there's no reason why online poker shouldn't be starting to happen in those countries. There was always an excuse that the internet wasn't good enough, but I mean, there's certainly other waves that could help poker. Obviously, we're very dependent on the governments connecting to .com, aren't we? When these markets are ring fenced, it's quite difficult to grow. We want France, Italy, Portugal, USA, India, China. Never going to be China, I don't think. But the more global liquidity that we can get, the more poker grows exponentially. People say to me about the moneymaker effect that happened and was the poker boom. They say to me like poker's got a bit static now, but I mean, the reason for that, in my opinion, is just one reason. It's not because we haven't had any more money makers. It's because of regulation. Because governments have basically screwed poker. I mean, they've split it so you can only play against people in your own country. So people can't have this dream of these $1 million prize pools. I think regulation is the number one problem why poker's online poker's become static, and obviously online poker is a big catalyst to grow live poker as well. The governments have just severed the spine of poker, in my opinion. I mean, it's pretty terrible, isn't it? How say I can go and play cash game with Bruno Pertusi, a friend of mine, in my venue, but he goes back to France. I can't play with him online. I mean, it's like an infringement of our civil rights, isn't it? But I mean, we can see how terrible the governments are with their attitude to poker, and
yeah,
it's I would love everyone in the world to be able to play on a site together, and imagine the prize pools you would get. Imagine if the whole world could play a $10 tournament. It could be like 10 million, right? Every Sunday. It could be insane. It would get so excited. So I would love to see that change, and more people would come in, because I do believe it's an addictive, nice, sociable game. It's intellectually taxing. I do believe that it's something that could really, really take off. But whilst it's all being segregated and treated quite meanly, I would say, being categorised like sports betting or casino, it's going to struggle to grow that much, because poker's a liquidity game. I remember when I ran my first online poker site about 20 years ago on WagerLogic, and the CEO of WagerLogic said to me, poker is about three things: liquidity, and liquidity. And it's always stuck with me. Even the guy wasn't that sharp, but he'd been in the business a long time. And he said it's very different to sports and casino. It needs liquidity, and as an industry, we've had that liquidity crucified, really, haven't we? Even in America, they keep setting poker up in different states. I mean, what is going on? How can Californians not play with like Texans? It's insane, isn't it? The approach that they're taking.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's I don't really understand the details of why it's happening so much, because if you look at even if you look at the number of people that actually have a gambling problem. Well, first of all, the casino games are legal in a lot of different places, so I mean, no one wins at those, right? Like literally no one. And secondly, there's not that many. It's actually quite a low percent of people that have a legit gambling problem. In which case, you can create kind of bounds around that, as Australia does, for example. You can see their anti-gambling campaigns. And another thing is there's all kinds of like degenerate policies out there that, in my opinion, are way, way worse than poker. Like the whole whatever's going on with the health, with food, you name it. I mean, it's like no one respects moral values in dating a lot of the time, or it's like, oh, it's just a
This
free
addiction
market.
thing's interesting though because people get addicted to shopping, smoking, drinking, sex. People get addicted to all sorts of things, and
Yeah,
I would have thought being addicted to like poker's I think one of the less harmful ones than. So some people have addictive personalities and they can gravitate to something else.
hmm
But I think when we're over 18, we should be allowed to make our own decisions. And if we want to gamble, if we want to play poker specifically, we should be able to make those decisions. We can go into a Prada shop and spend 5,000 on a handbag, right? That's going to hurt us financially. Yeah, we can only deposit $100, €100 in Sweden if I'm Swedish to play poker. It's kind of dumb. So I think at some point you have to be allowed to make your own decisions, and I don't consider poker as being like a harmful substance like drugs or
no, not
alcohol.
at all.
I consider
No, that's
poker
the
being a
thing.
game where you pay a fee to play, and you play a game. You know, I mean, let's face it, it's not even a game of chance, is it? Poker is a game of skill, like
Well,
chess.
ultimately, yes.
I think
Yeah.
that 10, 50 years ago, people were naive and thought, well, it could be a game of luck. You get your aces cracked, but we can see now from all the stats and the millions of hands that the best players win. So it's a game of skill. It shouldn't be illegal anywhere. You should be able to play all together. The governments have got it wrong. But because it doesn't generate much revenue, I mean, for example, if you look at the global revenues of gaming, I think sports is 55%, casinos 40, 38%, and poker's like 7% of global gaming revenues. So it goes onto the bottom of the list for the governments. They just don't care about it. I mean, how much tax are they going to get out of poker? Nothing, right? So because it's only 7% of the global gaming market, it doesn't even get legislation about it. It just gets merged in with the big sports and casino, and I think that's one of its problems. The governments don't really just want to spend a lot of time on what they're going to get 7% of the tax for.